What's going on there, folks? Good evening. Friday evening here. It is the last day of 2021. Thank goodness for that. It is about 6:55 p.m. California time, December 31st, of course, 2021. 2022 tomorrow. A lot of twos coming in the near future when it comes to magical numbers. I'm out here with Missy Mimi's right now.
How's it going, guys?
Hanging out, going to celebrate the new year together. The latest quake on the Earthquake 3D globe, a 3.3 earthquake into Northern California, the Cascadia subduction zone, the southern end, that is. We have seen a swarm of movement all up and down the west coast. Could be a little lengthy video tonight, a lot of activity to discuss. Made sure I hit the start button. Seems like the past couple updates I've forgot to hit the start button. Of course, it happens, right? All right, so what's going on out here along the west coast? We've seen a swarm of activity into Southern California and also up here into Northern California. Trust me when I say this, there is a lot more activity that's not being reported here on the map. We've been watching the live seismograph stations at Petrolia, California all day. That's kind of why I like to run the live seismographs, because we get to see the raw data coming in. And there's no doubt been a number of earthquakes there. Nothing large, but they're missing out on all the earthquakes that have been showing up on the live seismograph. I'm guessing probably seen a good 30 or 40 of them today. They may be microquakes, but there's a lot more that showed up than the 7 reported earthquakes here from the USGS. So, 7 earthquakes being reported. The largest so far, a 3.8 that happened this morning. Immediately after a 3.8, we've seen a pretty good seismic increase on the Petrolia station there, kicking off a bunch of microquakes that have not been reported. So waiting on the USGS. I'm sure they will get to it. Maybe they won't. Maybe they don't want people to panic out here. Either way, a lot of activity kicking up here along the southern end of the Cascadia. And the reason why I say the Cascadia is because these are deep earthquakes down into the subduction zone, 17, 18, 21 kilometers down into the subduction zone. These are not surface quakes, not surface ruptures, but more or less down there where the stuck, locked part here is. So just heard some fireworks out here. They're kind of starting early. It's only 7 o'clock at night here.
Woohoo!
So that's one section here of Northern California that's kind of pretty active right now. You know, it doesn't look so on the map, but I guarantee you there's a lot more that's not being reported. Of course, the activity here in the Geyser activity, or the Geyser region, pretty typical, although that looks pretty active. Looks like a lot more movement there in the Geyser activity south of Clear Lake than normal. Swarm of movement, of course. Hot stuff down there below the surface. Hydrothermal type plants and energy being produced here from, of course, heating underneath the ground. Let's see what else we got down south. Let's shoot down south here. A little bit of movement along the creeping section of San Andreas Fault. But the bigger story down here in the south part of the state on the Pacific side of the plate boundary is the Palomar Observatory. Swarm of movement around the Elsinore Fault. And it's still kind of kicking there. Zooming into this region here, just today, 35 earthquakes in mostly around the Palomar Mountain, Palomar Observatory here, where we've seen a bunch of 1s and some 2s kicking off here. A little separate swarming area to the west, about 3 or 4 miles directly to the west. But all this associated with the Elsinore Fault, which is runs from, down here into the south part of Southern California, all the way up to north into the jungles of LA, the concrete jungles, that is. Ends up here right outside of what's that called? The city? Whittier? Whittier, that's right. South Whittier, La Habra, all the jungles there in that vicinity. That's where that system ends. This area has not seen a significant size earthquake on it. I was doing a little study on it earlier, and it looks like a 6.5 to 7.5 magnitude earthquake is possible on this specific fault structure. And they believe the last one, they say a 6.0 occurred northwest of Lake Elsinore down here back in 1910. But A full rupture has not occurred, at least in our time, and they're guessing sometime maybe possibly pre-1800 is when the last surface rupture began or happened here on the Elsinore fault, which is pretty lengthy, by the way. It's a good stretch of fault systems and fairly high accumulation rate of stress and pressure. I think about between 4 millimeters to 6. If you're hearing explosions in the background, those actually sound like gunshots. Can you hear those?
Yeah.
Those sound like a kind of sounds like a high-powered rifle kicking off here. Good Lord, I think we're safe in here. I'm gonna watch out for flying bullets in this dangerous area of California. Good Lord. So anyway, yeah, it's been a while. I believe the intervals here of large earthquakes, full rupture of the Elsinore fault is roughly between, I think, about 250-year intervals, and we're looking at probably beyond that window when it comes to a full potential rupture along the Elsinore fault. So this area is very dangerous, not only for the potential along the San Andreas fault, but these other areas that have not seen significant movement, and the possibility of a large earthquake on them is very, very, very high in this area. So with the swarming activity taking place here in Southern Cal, it's good to be on guard, keep a watch out. If you got family or friends in Southern California area, just let them know what's going on here with the swarming. Just be on heightened alert. A lot of people just kind of brush it off as, well, we get earthquakes in California. If they happen, they happen. Well, this area right here, this Elsinore fault system, is around the highly populated area, the Los Angeles region here. So that would be a pretty damaging earthquake for a 7.5 to occur in this fault system. Further east here, along the San Andreas Fault, of course, we all know 8.1 is possible, but the location is a little bit distant from the Los Angeles area as far as the southern segment goes. Not to say the 8.1 won't cause some damage down there, but 7.5, much closer to the LA area, definitely would. So be on guard. You can see the activity ramping up here in two separate sections. Also up here to the north. By the way, this activity looks as though it's off of the Elsinore fault system, but there's segments here. I covered this a little bit earlier, just to the west of the San Felipe fault, which runs over here to the east. Not for sure why it's not located here on the map. You think they would update it, but
they only list the larger faults. They don't really list the smaller sections. They should.
Yeah, because the San Felipe fault actually extends pretty lengthy here.
There. Yeah.
And so anyway, there's segments of the Elsinore fault system that run through the Palomar Observatory area where this earthquake activity is occurring. So just a heads up down there. So now the other area of interest is up here around the Loma Linda Redlands area, where we're seeing 3.5, I believe, is the largest in this little sequence of earthquakes here on the San Jacinto fault area. There's many segments. This is a highly populated region as well, the San Bernardino area, Fontana, Highland. All this area, lots and lots of people. Not my type of deal. But that's a major fault system up here as well, the San Jacinto fault area. It's a super complex area of plates, or not plates, but of fault systems, and it's a spider web of network of faults. I've always said it, and it's a very dangerous area when it comes to earthquake potential. Over the last day or so, it's looking pretty active, so that's kind of why I'm issuing an earthquake watch for this region. Not only due to the movement down south here, but the activity occurring up here on the northern end of the towards the San Andreas Fault and the Mendocino Triple Point Junction, and the Cascadia Megathrust area is an area to watch pretty closely. I'll explain that here in a minute with the Cascadia. Looking down south here, we did see some further movement around the Imperial Fault with a, let's see what magnitude this is here, 1.8, little microquake. Also a lot of deep movement throughout the land in Southern California recently. We've been seeing some 12 to, I think about 17 kilometer deep earthquake activity occurring in Southern California, which is not very typical, but not unheard of. Most fractures of earthquakes occur roughly between 5 and 7 kilometers on these lateral type fault systems up here. So yeah, movement up here watching. A couple areas down here along the Elsinore fault system and the San Jacinto fault area up north here. kind of being naughty today. A lot of activity kicking up. Up here to the north, around the Ridgecrest area, things kind of calm. It seems as though mainly along this area of Northern California, southward, right along the Pacific Plate and North American Plate boundaries, where we're watching heightened earthquake activity.
Yeah, I noticed that. Like when the north and the south went quiet, Ridgecrest was kind of moving.
It was kicking inland.
Yeah, kicking inland, and then now that we've got that movement, it's kind of dwindled a little. So
A little bit
very interesting.
A little bit of activity out in the Tonopah area as well, but nothing significant. A couple small microquakes within the last hour. Gabbs, Nevada, it looks like 1.3. So some activity into the interior. Let's go ahead and spit it out. Interior part of the North American Plate, stretching up a little bit. You can see that line of activity kind of forming right again of Intermountain West region here. That's an obvious sign of some pressure and some increase in movement here along this plate, the North American Plate. Activity into the Yellowstone area. Outside of Hebgen Lake, it looks like some movement, some microquakes occurring on unnamed fault systems out there. One area that's kind of gone quiet is the Sawtooth Fault area. Only one 2.1 near Stanley, Idaho. Pretty deep movement, 14 kilometers for that earthquake. And some activity up again in the Washington area, and the Seattle fault system, pretty deep subduction zone quake around the Seattle fault, 24.8 kilometers for a 1.7. I do want to cover some activity along the Cascadia, but I do also want to cover what's going on around the rest of the globe here real quick. Alaska, of course, very active up here. Some microquakes occurring, even some subduction zone. See if I can spit it out.
Can we spit it out?
We will.
Some subduction
We'll spit it
zone
out.
quakes.
I'm excited to count down to 2022, so
Me too.
the excitement's building.
Right?
If I can stay awake that long. My bedtime's normally 9 o'clock, so.
Got some movement into Canada. Looks like up there too a little bit.
Looks
Is
like
that
the
Canada?
Alaska side.
Is that still Alaska?
Yeah,
side?
on the border.
Oh, I see that.
This area has seen a little bit of swarming. It looks like
My glasses are coming, guys. I'm blind.
glasses are coming.
Cannot see from
See,
here.
over the last 30 days, we remember that swarm of movement
Yeah,
here.
I
Been
remember
kind of
that.
watching. That's returned to the area. This activity was pretty heightened as well when we were having that earthquake activity off the coast of Oregon. Looks as though that's coming back a little bit. The earthquake activity we can check here in a moment in Canada, but the Alaska region interior all the way up to Fairbanks, looking pretty active when it comes to some subduction zone quakes there and some microquakes all throughout the area. Notice the Aleutian Islands and the western part of the Pacific Ring of Fire has gone completely quiet. This is some older movement from earlier this morning. No renewed earthquake activity at all along this entire plate. Over here to the west, to the south, all this activity pretty old as well. Looks as though earlier today we had a couple. That's actually in Hawaii, that latest quake. But we did have a 4.2 in the Tajikistan area. Tajikistan? Which one is it?
It's Tajikistan.
Tajikistan. Are we correct? Do we stand corrected?
I believe it's because we've had this debate, and I called it Tajikistan, and you said it is Tajikistan.
I always thought it was Tajikistan.
I did too, but
All right, we'll argue about that later.
Google
We'll get blasted with comments. Let us know, folks, in the comments. We appreciate the comments from last night. We were trying to pronounce a K name. I can't remember the name of the K. I don't know if it was a town in Texas or somewhere else that we were trying to pronounce.
Maybe Indonesia. I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, but we got corrected on it.
Did we?
So, all right. So a swarm of earthquakes up there through the Afghanistan area as well. It's a Middle East region. But overall, things pretty quiet. If you really look at the activity over the day, most of this is earlier throughout this region and also the Indonesia area. But the West Coast, folks, and Hawaii, they seem to bump hand in hand when it comes to activity. And that's the case today, obviously, in Hawaii. Seen some movement up around the Kilauea volcano area. Southeast flank pretty active as well. And check this out up here to the northwest. Around this, it's Hawaii's oldest volcano up here, Kohala, right? Or Kohala.
Kohala.
I was trying to pronounce it in Spanish, Kohala. So I don't even know what that means. Hopefully it's nothing bad.
Hopefully it's right.
But yeah, it's a little bit of activity up there. 2.5 kicking up here, deep underneath the oldest volcano here in Hawaii. I did a little bit of pulling up on this volcano. It is the oldest of 5 volcanoes that make up the island of Hawaii. Kohala is an estimated 1 million years old.
Wow.
So old that it experienced and recorded the reversal of Earth's magnetic field 780,000 years ago. It's believed to have breached the sea level more than about 500,000 years ago, and have last erupted 120,000 years ago. So, an old volcano, a lot of history. It's seen a lot, no doubt, and there's some activity kicking up underneath it right now, with a couple twos kicking up there at 27 to 18 kilometer depth for that earthquake activity. Just haven't seen too much movement up here. That's kind of why I pointed it out. Regular activity on the southeast flank and the Kilauea area. Hopefully those weren't bullets falling on the house.
No joke.
I heard something just outside, kind of like, I don't know what.
House.
So yeah, Kilauea also showing some movement over here. Pretty shallow movement around Volcano Hawaii. 2.0, a couple twos kicking off there. Let's go ahead and check out the Cascadia. I think we covered pretty much anything globally. Southeast or South America, this kind of looks like it's from last night.
Well, one says the 4.4 is 12:31.
Yeah, but the timestamp on that
is like really early, maybe.
Yeah, because right now it's 3:10.
Yeah, so
on
that
1/1.
That must have been like really, really early this morning, maybe.
So earlier this morning, some activity, no renewed movement along the South Atlantic Ocean or the North Atlantic Ocean. Main focus right now, folks, I believe, unless we see something drastic and major over here along Japan, like a mega quake, we're talking about activity really ramping up here along the west coast. The tremor map has kicked up some activity almost along the entire length of the Cascadia subduction zone here. While this is not a huge number, only 87 epicenters of tremor, it is something we haven't seen in, I don't know, about 5 weeks or so.
Yeah,
right?
It spread out that much.
Because we had a very quiet spell of activity, and then we had the issuance of a bunch of earthquakes here around the Blanco fracture zone, bunch of 5s and 4s and 3s kicking off here in that earthquake swarm. And then all the activity here in Northern California at the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. And those were subduction zone earthquakes. I call it the activity around the Cascadia subduction zone because it's within the subduction zone of the Cascadia. That's a fact. It's not just some fault system there in Northern California. It is the Cascadia subduction zone where all this activity is occurring down dip.
And lately, a lot of the tremor, when it did kick up, was down dip. Down here at the southern end.
Exactly. So now we got further movement up and down almost the entire length, which would extend up here past Vancouver Island ranges with about 87, what did I say, 87 or 83? 87 epicenters of tremor. So winding up the spring of the Cascadia much more. This activity would explain the movement, the surface rupture, or not surface, but the upstream, if you will, what was it, about 17 to 21 kilometers deep?
Yeah.
These here tremors are much deeper, roughly between 25 to 35 kilometers deep. So further down dip, we're seeing some tremor, some vibration, if you will, slippage of the plates, which is putting further pressure up here along the upstream area, the locked area, if that makes sense. So this movement here just kind of reconfirms the activity that we've seen in Northern California today and still are seeing.
And as you can see, that area within here still not showing any tremor.
In the middle part of Oregon?
But
yeah.
we did recently, I think it was earlier this year, we did see very little there, and it was kind of interesting.
Isn't it weird how they have... like if on that 9.0 scenario of the Cascadia, right, they have the epicenter located right here, which I find that very odd. But then again, it's kind of like the middle point, if you will, of the Cascadia, so maybe that's why. But
we don't see much tremor.
But looking at the locked areas, we covered this here when we were seeing that earthquake swarm off the coast of Oregon along the Blanco fracture zone. The locked areas were mostly up here into Washington,
and
but
mainly down here.
mainly down south here into the southern segment of the Cascadia subduction zone.
Well, they're predicting like a full rupture, but a partial would be more likely.
Well, I think there's a higher chance of a partial rupture more than a full rupture.
Yeah. And it would be more towards the southern end.
Yeah, the southern end tends to accumulate more stress. Just that's how it's designed.
Yep.
I think the northern end has had a little bit of release of pressure. I don't know exactly when, but southern end, yes, that could be an 8.1 to 8.5 quake if this thing does kick up. Then again, we could just see a couple more surface or upstream earthquakes in the 3 range for a little while, 2 to 3 range. But either way, with all the activity occurring along the Blanco fracture zone and the deeper movement in the Northern California area at the southern end, it's good to be on guard for sure. I mean, if I look at the map and see activity way down south here kicking up, and very quiet here in this section for the most part, and movement up here in the north, it's possible though, very possible, to see some further movement along the other segments of the San Andreas Fault. I mean, just because it's been 100 and something years since San Francisco had the 1906 earthquake, there's still accumulated stress. It may not just be a complete 7.9 earthquake like they had there.
Yeah.
But it's possible with the accumulated stress over the years, we could see some further movement along any section here of the San Andreas Fault. So that's kind of why I'm issuing a West Coast watch with all this activity kicking up.
Yeah,
no activity here
unless we see something major in Japan to relieve. We're gonna it's that whole west area is just quiet, so we're lighting up. It definitely
Hawaii and the West Coast just lighting up.
West Coast lighting up. So that explains the teeter-totter effect.
Exactly. So we'll see.
Then that movement further west there, even if it's just a little bit, just
but this activity
shows maybe a little further.
This is all
That's
deeper.
Deep.
Yeah, 108 kilometers for 4.2. A lot deeper movement, but I don't think this is having any effect right now on what's going on here in Northern California.
No, I mean maybe that's stress from
Japan further
area.
pressure here from the west, but that's not going to do anything.
No, that's not gonna relieve anything.
What else we got here in the center part of the country? Just some activity through Kansas, Oklahoma City, Texas region. But let's check out the activity in Yellowstone. I looked at the map here a little bit. I did not see... Let me see if I can pull that up here. Yellowstone area. I did not see any significant quakes here in this area. Looks like it may have been this little individual quake and maybe this one here. These other ones look like they're distant earthquakes, maybe around the Idaho area or somewhere else, but these are definitely not localized earthquakes. These distinct sharp ones are, and those may be the ones that are showing up on the USGS earthquake activity map here. Looks like 0.9 and a negative 0.8, whatever that means, showing up here on some of this on these seismograph stations. Let's see what else we got here. That's pretty calm. Tremor map, of course. Gonna watch it. We got to watch the West Coast pretty closely on that. Space weather. Actually, let's check out Earthquakes Canada here real quick. Let's see what's going on.
Sounds good.
Movement here looks like at least the latest quake into what do we got there in the Ontario area. Looks like a 2.3 occurring earlier in the day. I'm kind of interested in what's going on over here on the northern end of the Cascadia. See this activity up here?
Oh, yeah.
That was not there last night. Looks like a little swarm of movement up here on the... Even though it's not in the subduction zone here of the Cascadia, it's still kind of up on the northern plate, way up there by the Explorer plate, I guess is what it's called. You got the Gorda, Juan de Fuca Explorer plate up here. Either way, it's a subduction zone region here to the east. Some movement taking place directly on the plate side of, the Pacific side of this plate interaction. Looks like, see what these magnitudes here are. 3.1 being reported, and well, it looks like a couple threes kicking up there throughout the day today. Not showing up on the USGS model.
Could those be what we're we were seeing maybe on the BC station?
Possibly. That's kind of way up here, though. The BC station over here, these were like defined very spiky.
Yeah.
Right? Those are localized earthquakes, so it would show up as... I don't even think it would show up on the stations there.
Are there
Threes
any
wouldn't.
local over there?
I could probably pull up a couple stations here and see if I can get a little bit closer to this movement. Anything like 4.5 and above will definitely show up on the BC seismograph station or Petrolia for that matter. So definitely some activity kicking up here on the northern end, up here, northern end of the Pacific Plate, Juan de Fuca Plate, or Explorer Plate, if you will. Inner plate boundary. There we go. See if I can spit it out, which is further probably adding stress here into the Cascadia, creating a lot of that tremor activity that we're seeing inland. So got to watch it, folks. Definitely got to watch it. Solar weather. Let's jump into that real quick before my voice goes out. I'm not completely healed. It's been one heck of a struggle trying to get rid of whatever this is. Had a little bit of movement on the sun, producing looks like equivalent of what we got, almost an M flare there. I believe a CME or whatnot was kicked off.
Prominence. So
Looks like the eruption there kind of picked up a little bit. That was earlier today. What was a near M flare, C9.8. CME is not expected from this fairly minor event. I could have swore one of these space weather sites said that there was a pretty good size CME that was produced. But looking at their forecast does not look like it. Looks pretty green across the board. That's pretty neat looking.
I know, I was just looking at that. That is pretty neat.
Imagine having a massive one form on the sun and then Earth directed. I don't know if that would be good or not. It'd cook us.
Right.
Anyway, this should have a little impact on our planet. So these folks are kind of like me. Hopefully the new year will bring us a continued upward trend of solar activity, solar flares, CMEs, and many more displays of aurora for all of us to enjoy. That would be great, but here in Northern California, I highly doubt we'll see it. There is some heightened movement right now being kicked up here on the higher latitudes. I know these guys are showing green across the board, but this aurora forecast is telling us a different story. Looks like some movement kicking up here. I believe this is updated. Let me see here yeah, it's definitely been updated. Seen a heightened increase in potential for auroras here. Geomagnetic storming possibility, at least 50% or higher. Looks like maybe 70% listed in there of the aurora on the northern latitudes. So I kind of expect the green up here to change to yellow, possibly red. We'll see if these guys get to it or not. Sunspot activity kind of diminishing, of course. Back behind it, 2922 looks pretty wimpy. And there's not a whole lot forming even behind that area. So it is what it is. We'll continue to watch the activity. It looks like movement kicking up here a little bit down in the Chile area. Also the Petrolia area. Let me see if you guys can see this. Going to be this station right here. There's some small earthquake activity. Of course, prior to that, there was much, much more. These are little bitty, super bitty, small microquakes. But earthquake activity nonetheless showing up there in Northern California at the Cascadia subduction zone, and obviously not being reported by the USGS. So seems as though they've only been reporting maybe 2.5 and above, even though we're looking at the all magnitudes map when we do the update. So we'll continue to watch it, continue to monitor it, folks. Just stay safe out there, be prepared, have a safe new year. And if you're out there partying it up, make sure you do it safely. Of course, no drinking and driving and whatnot. And just be prepared for some heightened earthquake activity here for 2022. We will chat you guys a little bit later. Stay safe out there, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Have a good night, guys.